Bob Whitaker maintains what I can only describe as a racist blog. He's written a thing called The Mantra, which has been parroted by racist blogs and vlogs across the internet, like the video released by YouTube channel For My Nation entitled The Mantra. Now, on Whitaker's blog, he talks about heresy, and he states the following: when you call people names who disagree with you, scream hate or racism, it says nothing about the point we make, but it tells us all about you. Well, I'm not going to scream racism unjustly today. Instead, I'm going to go through all the points raised in the mantra, and a few of the justifications used by the racists to believe in what they've labeled white genocide. First, I want to point out the obvious, well, at least obvious to me and many of my viewers. The mantra is a conspiracy theory carefully contrived to achieve a political goal. Second, it's perfectly natural for us to believe in these kinds of theories, especially when they claim to alert us to some kind of danger. Fear-mongering politicians take advantage of this part of our nature all the time. Let's take a moment to look at what Michael Shermer, editor of Skeptic Magazine, has to say on this.
So what I want to talk about today is belief. I want to believe, and you do too. And in fact, I think my thesis here is that belief is the natural state of things. It is the default option. We just believe. We believe all sorts of things. Belief is natural. Disbelief, skepticism, science is not natural. We are pattern-seeking primates. We connect the dots. A is connected to B, B is connected to C, and sometimes A really is connected to B. And that's called association learning. I call this process patternicity, that is, the tendency to find meaningful patterns in both meaningful and meaningless noise. When we do this process, we make two types of errors. A type 1 error, or false positive, is believing a pattern is real when it's not. Our second type of error is a false negative. A type 2 error is not believing a pattern is real when it is. So let's do a thought experiment. You are a hominid 3 million years ago walking on the plains of Africa, and you hear a rustle in the grass. Is it a dangerous predator, or is it just the wind? Your next decision could be the most important one of your life. Well, if you think that the rustle in the grass is a dangerous predator and it turns out it's just the wind, you've made an error in cognition. You made a type 1 error, false positive. But no harm, you just move away, you're more cautious, you're more vigilant. On the other hand, if you believe that the rustle in the grass is just the wind and it turns out it's a dangerous predator, you're lunch. You've just won a Darwin Award. You've been taken out of the gene pool. We have a pattern detection problem. That is, assessing the difference between a type 1 and a type 2 error is highly problematic, especially in split-second life and death situations. So the default position is just believe all patterns are real. All rustles in the grass are dangerous predators and not just the wind. And so I think that we evolved. There was a natural selection for the propensity for our belief engines, our pattern-seeking brain processes to always find meaningful patterns and infuse them with these sort of predatory or intentional agencies that I'll come back to. So for example, what do you see here? It's a horse head, that's right. It looks like a horse, must be a horse. That's a pattern. And is it really a horse, or is it more like a frog? See, our pattern detection device, which appears to be located in the anterior cingulate cortex, it's our little sort of detection device there, can be easily fooled, and this is the problem. For example, what do you see here? Yes, of course, it's a cow. Once I prime the brain, it's called cognitive priming. Once I prime the brain to see it, it pops back out again, even without the pattern that I've imposed on it. And what do you see here? Some people see a Dalmatian dog. Yes, there it is. And there's the prime. So when I go back, without the prime, your brain already has the model, so you can see it again.
So you can see it's actually quite natural to believe in conspiracies and see dangerous patterns in meaningless noise, especially when someone frames it for us, as Shermer did with the images of the cow and the dog. Now, let's take a look at the mantra and see how Bob Whitaker frames his argument, priming your brain to see a dangerous pattern of genocide where none exists.
Everybody says that there is a race problem.
This play on words is an obvious straw man argument. People often say there is a problem with racism, but that is very different from saying there is a race problem.
Everybody says that this race problem will be solved when the third world pours into every white country, and only into white countries.
Here is yet another straw man argument. I've never heard anyone say that immigration is a solution to racism. Second, there are no white countries, certainly not in the Americas. There were millions of Native Americans living here long before the white Europeans and their black slaves arrived. And even in Europe there was considerable race mixing going on for centuries. But people have a natural fear of anyone different from themselves. So Whitaker takes advantage of this and tries to frame immigration as a planned attack on the white race. It's not. People naturally tend to emigrate from places where there's poverty and or lack of freedom to places where there's opportunity and liberty. In Europe and North America, we have both opportunity and liberty. People come here because this is an attractive place to be.
Everybody says that the final solution for this race problem is for every white country and only white countries to assimilate, i.e. intermarry, with all of these non-whites.
Yet another straw man argument. No one claims that interracial marriage is a solution to racism, and no one is forcing you to marry outside your own race. There are no laws dictating race mixing. You are free to choose your own life partner in accordance with your own values. And any dating site worth their salt will allow you to search for the perfect blonde-haired, blue-eyed mate of your racist dreams. In the information age, it's as easy as clicking a mouse.
The international legal definition of the crime of genocide is found in Articles 2 and 3 of the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide. Article 2 describes two elements of the crime of genocide. One, the mental element, meaning the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. And two, the physical element, which includes 5 acts described in sections A, B, C, D, and E. A crime must include both elements to be called genocide. In the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. A. Killing members of the group.
If you look at violent interracial crime, black-white crime, there are about 1 million acts of violent black-white crime any given year. And by violent, I mean rape, murder, robbery with aggravated manslaughter.
A number of mantra apologists have used the UN conventions on genocide to frame their arguments. The racist cites crime statistics to show white people under attack. No doubt there is violent crime, and some of it is statistically going to be black on white, but it fails to qualify as genocide because of the lack of intent. A crackhead robbing a white man is intent on getting money for crack. It's a crime to be sure, but not genocide. For this to be genocide, there needs to be a coordinated and purposeful effort on the part of one group against another. Individual crimes, even hate crimes, don't qualify.
I said back in our little thought experiment, you're a hominid walking on the plains of Africa. Is it just the wind or a dangerous predator? What's the difference between those? Well, a wind is inanimate. A dangerous predator is an intentional agent. And I call this process agenticity. That is the tendency to infuse patterns with meaning, intention, and agency, often invisible beings from the top down.
Well, my theory is that organized Jewry has a plot against the white race.
All the racist channels that I've seen parroting the mantra have assigned Jews the role of the evil agent in their conspiracy. Without evidence, they conclude that a Zionist plot is coordinating the effort to overrun the white race with immigration from outsiders.
The Muslims are completely flooding into Europe because of the Jews that are in control of those governments.
They even blame Zionists for Muslim immigration into Europe and completely ignore the fact that Israel is heavily supported by Europe and the US, and a Muslim takeover would end that support. And since Zionists can be blamed for just about anything, in comments they often label opposition and dismiss sources as Jewish. If you oppose them, you're a Jew. The hypocrisy of this is easily exposed if we take Whitaker's statement on heresy that I read in the beginning and replace the words racist and hate with Jewish and Zionist. His statement then becomes, when you call people names who disagree with you, you scream Jew or Zionist. It says nothing about the point we make, but it tells us all about you.
They say they are anti-racist.
But what they really are is anti-white.
Andrasisti dulorð yfir andhvíta.
When it comes to, like, racism is nothing more than anti-white, looking deeper into that statement, it's kind of a, I don't know, it's kind of a crude, hyperbolic statement that embodies a whole lot of explanation and deeper thought. And I think they're actually kind of right.
No, they're not. Not even a little. Where that statement falls down is in the fact that racism is not an exclusively white phenomenon. Anybody can be a racist. Even black people can be racist. If I denounce them for this, how is that anti-white? It's also a fairly well-known fact that there's considerable anti-Korean racism in Japan. So if I denounce that as racism, how is that anti-white? There aren't even any white people involved. Saying that anti-racism is anti-white is nothing more than an attempt by racists to deflect criticism, and they make the statement as if there's no comeback for it. Well, there you go. You just got one.
It's all about them using our own culture, our own sense of fairness, our own sense of feelings of guilt. We have this established guilt over slavery and over the colonial era from way back in the 1400s, 1500s. Basically, it's all about white guilt.
On several occasions, I've cited incidents of actual genocide in order to show the difference between actual genocide and the false positive they've mistaken for genocide. The examples I brought up were the slaughter of the Native Americans and the Armenian genocide. The response I got was that this was simply an attempt to instill in them white guilt.
If you don't believe me that there has been an anti-white propaganda for the last several years, and you are either blind or so filled with white guilt that you just refuse to see the real agenda.
Again, as with the statement anti-racist is anti-white, we see an attempt to deflect criticism. Instead of learning from history, they prefer you remain ignorant. Learning the attributes of real genocide may allow you to see the truth about the false genocide they've framed for you. So I've gone through their major arguments, and I've showed that the genocide they want you to fear is a fiction, a type 1 error in cognition, a false positive. It's clear the world they'd like to create is one where national borders are used as pens to keep the races apart. Immigration laws would be decided on skin color. Reproduction rights would be stripped, and anti-miscegenation laws would make interracial marriages illegal. Instead, people would be bred, like dogs, for specific skin, eye, and hair color. I don't know about anyone else, but I'll keep my freedom and reproductive rights, thank you. My Constitution says that all men are created equal. And the base of Lady Liberty says, send us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free.